Hello and welcome to Inclusive Conversations, which is the podcast of the Westford DEI Committee. Today is December 13th, 2024, and with Anjali, Rajput, and we are really honored to have Bill McDonald, who is a member of the DEI Committee. And so this is one of the episodes where we focus on a member, helping folks to get to know that person, and also some interesting topics related to diversity that we know we're going to cover. So welcome, Bill. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Joe and Anjali, and excited to be a part of this discussion today, and excited to be a part of the DEI committee as the liaison from the school committee. And I know it's been a short time so far, but the discussions have been critical, and they've been valuable, and I'm learning so much from the work of your committee in the town, and how the schools can support your efforts, and also that the process back towards the schools, and how we all learn and share together. So it's been a pleasure and an honor. So
it's definitely a back and forth. We are an advisory committee to the select board and the school committee. And our intention is to continue to inform in the best possible way the work of of town boards, committees, commissions, and town government. And so critical to that, of course, is working closely with the school system. Let me just read our vision, and then we'll get on with some questions for you, just to learn a little bit about you, your background, and your professional life, and why you joined the committee. Our vision for Westford is a town that embraces, celebrates, and draws strength from our growing diversity, is an engaged and inclusive community boasting a town government whose practices and actions display a consistent commitment to equity, and is known by current and future generations as a welcoming place that fosters an abiding sense of belonging. So that's what we're looking toward, and we are, I think, making a lot of progress. Even before the committee started, I think we were making progress in that direction as well in Westford. So, Bill,
yes,
tell us a little bit about yourself. You've been in Westford for a little while. Your kids are in the school system. You're on the DEI committee. Tell us about you and why you joined the committee.
Sure. So I moved to Westford in February of 2021. So we're coming up on 4 years here at the end of this winter season. I've been in education since 2008. I did my undergraduate work at Hartwick College, very small school in upstate New York near Cooperstown. If any baseball fans out there,
just went there last year.
You just went there,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Oneonta is just outside of Cooperstown, and I studied biology and education there, and did my student teaching in a couple central schools outside of Oneonta and Sydney High School, as well as Skeneva Central School. And, some of the central schools in upstate New York, very different, maybe like some of our regional schools out in Western Mass or other places in New England, but K to 12, all in one school. I was student teaching for my fall semester in 2007 and 2008, and then finished up, did a thesis for my biology degree. It was about thought triggers. It was about kind of priming school lessons through just very simple puzzles and activities, and if that would have a significant effect on learning, both in the lesson and then in assessment. So came away from my experience in upstate New York, came away with a New York State teaching license, but the New England, the ocean, the sports teams, growing up here, and the priority, of education in Massachusetts and around Boston just called me home. So I was that summer of 2008, I was kind of preparing looking to gather all of my MTELs. I had a New York State teaching license, but without 3 years of experience, and there's an interstate pact agreement. If you have 3 years of experience, you can take that license to a number of these states. Without those 3 years, my New York State license was just a piece of paper. So I had to gather the MTELs and prepare my plan for applications to schools. And I bumped into one of my friends from high school in early August of 2008. And she said, where are you teaching? I said, actually, I'm just, trying to get my license together. And she said, well, why don't you get hooked up with my father's program? He's in Wakefield. He's in special ed now. And, I think you'll enjoy it. And when you're ready to go be a high school bio teacher, you'll have it on your resume. I said, it sounds like a great opportunity. And I had grown up with her and her brother and their father, Dave Farwell, who was my predecessor at Seam Prep. So I landed at Seam Prep in 2008, that fall. And if you remember back then, it was, it was the recession came on not too far later.
Were you teaching there at first?
So I was an instructional assistant. I was basically a paraprofessional, an ESP. So I started there as an aide. And within a couple months, I quickly realized that this was what I wanted to do. And those early experiences with those students were profound. It was, every day was a challenge, was a blessing. It was, sometimes when I student taught in New York, you'd get into this routine of the schedule. You'd have your 5 sections. I was teaching a couple sections of honors bio and AP bio, a couple college prep biology sections. And, you have your lesson plans and you have, what you're going to present and, your assignments. But it felt, you get into that rhythm, right? Working in this at Seam Prep was something totally different. And diving into students' IEPs, diving into behavior, social emotional dysregulation and positive coping strategies. And it was really thrilling work. And so I changed paths. I went and got my master's in special education from Salem State University. I took over as a teacher there in 2010. And, in 2019, so I had some discussions with my predecessor, Dave, about becoming a principal. And I said, I thought about being a principal, just not, after a very long tenure as a teacher. And, he said, look, I think you have all the traits for it. So I went back to school again. I went to UMass Lowell and got my ed specialist degree in K-12 administration. And I was doing my principal practicum under him in 2018, 2019. And that April, Dave had to take a leave, unfortunately, due for personal reasons. And, I was thrust into the principal role on Monday afternoon, visiting my executive director. And so that was quite a change for me to abruptly go from a colleague and a teacher with all my specialists and staff to the interim principal and their direct supervisor overnight.
So in a short space of time, about 10 years, it sounds like.
Yep.
You went from being a teacher of content
yes,
to being a principal of this
administration
unique school.
Yes.
We were talking a little earlier, and you spelled it out for me: SEEM Prep.
Yes.
In Wakefield, but it's for a certain group of students. Maybe you can explain.
Yeah. So SEAM Collaborative, we serve 11 member districts just north of Boston. And we serve students from ages pre-K up to age 22 with various needs. They could be medically fragile. They could be deaf and hard of hearing. They might be on the autism spectrum. They might have cognitive or intellectual disability. emotional and behavioral dysregulation, different sensory needs. And so, we have a breadth of programming across 6 main sites in different age spans. So our elementary programs that are pre-K to grade 5 or grade 8. We have a middle school that's grades 5 to 8. We have 2 high schools. So I'm the therapeutic high school. I run that program as principal, and we serve students ages 14 to 22. Wow. We also have a campus academy high school. It's kind of our diploma track high school. And we also have an assessment center that supports 45-day placements and helps determine where students' needs may be met, whether it's in district or in other placements. Could be within SEAM Collaborative, could be in a more restrictive, a more intensive program like a private program. Area private programs might be Lighthouse or Melmark or the New England Center for Children, or maybe a residential placement. So there's a continuum of services for special needs, or for making sure that students have access and opportunities for learning. And it starts from the district level in Westford Public Schools, in general education classrooms, and it goes far, very far out, but it's where you meet the learner and their needs. And I'm very happy with where SEAM as a collaborative is in terms of that continuum and all the different stakeholders and students that we serve. So,
Bill, I have a quick question. So you gave us
Sure.
a journey so far from where you were from college and all the way into your professional career. Then can you please shed some light about your journey into the school committee and the DEI committee? How did you get started? What really got you interested to be a part of school committee?
Yep. So, moving into Westford was a decision for me and my family, knowing the quality of the school system here, knowing the opportunities and the rich discussions that happen in this town. And, within about a year and a half, I was having a lot of conversations with residents, with, friends, pre-K, preschool families, different community members, about schools, and people just picking my brain and questions about where's education, what's special education like, where are we right now, and in my 16 plus years of working, I've really seen education kind of reaching this critical juncture point where there are various events that have happened, historical events, and just the way that things have unraveled for schools in the country, where certain laws and maybe the politics or the dynamic societal forces have taken schools. And schools are big community hubs. We know that that the events, the instruction, the learning opportunities, the engagement on a number of levels between students, staff, families, other community members, the state and the federal impacts on schools. We are hubs, and so it was very evident to me in the discussions I had with friends and residents, as well as seeing what I have, the vantage point of being a parent, of being an educator, from an ESP or paraprofessional to a teacher to an administrator, basically understanding that this is a very critical time and going, how can I help? I always knew I was going to volunteer in some capacity in schools. I've in other lives, I could see myself being a coach. I'm very involved in sports. I've been helping coach soccer and here in Westford, but I played a number of sports. I was a Boy Scout, so I was involved. I was in the woods a lot growing up, and I really just was a calling to give back and try to help in this puzzle. And it's an always it's a puzzle that's always working. It's always improving. It's always needing solutions. It's like that growth mindset. You never stop learning, and there's always something to work on in schools. And, especially in light of DEI work, it's about opportunity. It's about belonging. It's about breaking down barriers and providing access. Making sure the playing field is level through supports and through strategies and through funding and different initiatives. And so that's really where, I was lucky to be elected to this position. And, at the end of last school year, within the school committee, we, were offered, what opportunities, what subcommittees, what things would you like to do? And I said, I would really like to be involved in the DEI committee, if that's an opportunity. And one of the things that isn't lost on me is, we have these discussions about, various groups of people that are marginalized, that have not been represented, that have not been served. It's not lost on me that I am a white male, educator with a lot of power and a lot of privilege, in a very education-rich state. And so, the purpose that I feel is, how do I help wield some of that influence and that power to bring inequities and to bring those barriers down and to provide more access and opportunities. So, and I'm learning too, and that, and I practice that mindset with my staff at my school. If I had a 40+ year career in education, I would still be learning and would still be challenging myself and changing mindsets and perspectives. So that's what I hope to bring to the DEI committee and my work as a school committee member, is really just to scrutinize, to question, to evaluate, and to just keep probing. Can we do this better? Can we provide more success and opportunity for our students and our community members? So
a quick follow-up question, as you just said that DEI speaks to you and you want to be an influencer who can help with the equity. Was it the gradual move or gradual awakening towards the diversity and inclusion and equity, or was it like a specific incident that made you thought about your role in the inclusion and equity a little bit more than what you would have ever imagined or thought? I do understand that you are associated with the children who are on the spectrum, needs a little bit of special attention, right? A little bit of extra access. But sometimes in a lot of people's stories, it's like major events. Something really happens, something really strikes them, and they feel like, oh my God, I can do things differently. Did you ever experience that? Like, shed a little bit more light into what really spoke to you about the diversity?
Sure. I think there's a number of ways that I would answer that question. I think first, growing up, my parents were two very hardworking, blue collar. They worked very hard to get me into a community where education was a priority. And it dawned on me at a very early age, get myself involved in any way I can. And whether that was scouting or sports, or discussions, theater, band, I was doing everything. But through college and through beginning as a professional, just constantly kind of opening up my mindset and perspectives as to, I have not had that experience or that life, those events. What would that be like? I think the work that I've had in 16 plus years with my students and my families has given me an incredible perspective as to what you know what we have to work on as a society, and where we put our resources into providing opportunities for people to learn. Many of my students are not from the member districts that the collaborative represents or serves. Many of the communities of my students are communities that are, various cultures and ethnicities, families that don't have the economic resources to advocate, families that don't know how or may feel pressured not to advocate. And so there was a critical component that this part of our practice at my program is parent education and training through our meetings, through the team process, working with outside agencies, working with the Department of Developmental Disabilities or the Department of Mental Health or the Mass Rehabilitation Commission, and various social agencies like Communitas or VinFin or Triangle Incorporated. I can rattle off a bunch of them that, we work with talented social workers and outpatient therapists and counselors, and just how do we get resources to our families to, to be more, have more enriching lives and feel like they are not behind walls that have been constructed by society over many years in different systems, and feel more enriching lives. And I think, it's not lost to me, for instance, that I have students from over 20 communities north of Boston, and some of them have to drive over an hour to get to my program, to get to my school in Wakefield. That amount of time in a van or a bus, it's just not fair, right? And so I might be going into a meeting or into a discussion with families and with school districts to go, is SEAM Prep an appropriate placement for you as a family, for you as a student, because of the time barrier on a van, because of there are placements potentially closer to that, to your community, to that sense of belonging that you have in that city or town. We ask these questions. It's like, yeah, I could lose a student and a family, but if that's a better opportunity for them, that's what I want. And one of the main tenets that when I ran for school committee, because I have a special education focus, special education in schools right now is a very big element to a lot of the discussion and discourse, not only around DEI, but around budgets, around funding and resources, and how do you make all those components work for a school district. One of the big messages I was communicating was that Westford needs to focus on its capacity in the school district. It needs to focus on keeping its students, at least in special education, in the district. And my program is considered an out-of-district program. So students have to travel outside of Westford Public Schools or outside of their home communities to be given the access and the opportunity to make progress on their IEP and in their education. Westford can always be striving towards a better, a higher ceiling, where more, the idea would be all those students on IEPs and all their needs are served within Westford Public Schools. Is that the reality? No. Is that ever going to be the reality for any school or town or community right now? It's that's the ideal that we're working towards. So I think that's kind of the perspective and the mission that I try to bring is, constantly challenging and questioning, how can we do this better? How can we be more efficient? How can we break down, build capacity and open up access and opportunity for learners. And again, like I say, I echo that message. I know that I'm going to have students in my program, because special education is such a puzzle. It's such a resource heavy area of schools, and it's a difficult field. There's every day educators walk into their jobs and they're challenged. They're told about they get criticisms about how they're told about how to do their jobs, or what kids are learning or not learning, or do more with less. And so my challenge is, both as an educator and as a school committee member, is to go, how do we make it better?
Well, we're lucky. I think we're really lucky to have somebody like you on the committee, both committees, actually. You've spoken about a lot of different kinds or aspects or dimensions of equity. And it's so interesting because everybody comes to this work from a different background, different set of considerations, a different set of inspiration. And I know that we wanted to also touch on with you this idea of equity as it's, if you will, taken from within the school system, and how we know how seriously the school system takes the idea of equity, so seriously that you all are involved in an equity audit, a long-term process, which will have, I'm sure, many different fruits. We know that you're involved with that, so that was actually Anjali's question as we were thinking about this podcast. So do you want to ask it, or should I?
No, you can go ahead. Go ahead. You know the question. That's fine.
Tell us a little bit about where we are in that, and what as residents of Westford, my kids are now 10 years out of high school. Anjali, you have at least one child in high school. But we maintain, obviously, an abiding interest in the way that the school system is growing. So tell us a little bit about the equity audit, its purpose, and then what it's looking at.
Yeah. So the equity audit is being conducted by AIR, the American Institutes of Research. This was a 2-year process that Westford Public Schools wanted to engage in, to really dig down into some of the feedback and the data and, some of those fundamental core issues to equity work, whether it's opportunities in school, sense of belonging, classroom management styles, interschool relationships, how students perceive staff, how staff perceive students, how do parents perceive school, special education, maybe barriers to curriculum or to successes, how are various marginalized or minority communities being served or not served in Westford schools. So, really an equity audit kind of focuses down through what is first data collection, focus groups, interviews, kind of pouring through the numbers. One of the things I think that Massachusetts highlights very well is its data systems. And so there are a number of places you can turn to, district profiles, DART system, various databases for some of the numbers, right? So whether it's, testing data, students with needs, high needs, English language learners, students with disabilities, see some of those performance measures. But I think this, the equity data collection is very multi-tiered through interviews and focus groups, and so the first year was very much collecting a lot of that qualitative and quantitative data, allowing AIR to look at some of those data sets to pour through some of our numbers. They're researchers, right? So they get into that nitty gritty. And then, from those discussions and from those interviews, come back with what are some of these kind of resounding sorts of statements or perspectives. And typically with equity audits, they're challenging. They're not meant to be comfortable. I mean, if everything was working right, great. Great, give ourselves a certificate, a stamp of approval, we move on. But that's not the point of an equity audit. The point of an equity audit is to dig down, and determine what are the systems in the structures, at a foundation level that might be contributing to a lack of equity, a lack of inclusion, opportunity, sense of belonging within the school district. And so luckily, last Friday, I was able to be a part of the root cause analysis event that Westford Public Schools held with AIR. We did it at Millennium. It was about 36 people there. It was a terrific day.
What work group were you part of? I understand there's some work groups.
Yeah, so I was part of the kind of the resources and budget sort of work group, and part of that was had a little bit of a focus on special education. So I felt very comfortable in my. I didn't pick that group. It was picked for me. If I wanted to push myself out of the comfort zone, I probably would have went to one of the other two tables. I know Wendy Glory was over at one of the tables with Madonna McKenzie and some, so it was a nice mix of administrators and teachers. We had some students there. We had some outside residents. We had some parents there. And so just a good representation of the community. But that root cause analysis, gives you those summaries. It gives you that data. It gives you those, I think, besides the quantitative data, really reading some of the statements that kind of resonated, that were, and they really try to focus on statements made multiple times. So these are the collectives of many residents or many families or parents or students that challenge you. And okay, here's a problem statement. Here is might be, okay, Westford Public Schools has prioritized building relationships or its sense of belonging or social emotional learning, but the staff or the students or families don't think it's being implemented or, communicated that well, or it's not being consistent. So, you take that problem statement and you keep digging down. And, often with root cause analyses, it's asking questions. Why? Where it's like you keep going down, digging down further and further. It's not just looking at the surface level sort of symptoms. You really want to dig down to what is the root cause? What is that main driver for why people may be feeling a certain way, or what the numbers may say? And then going after those roots and really trying to affect change by overhauling systems, right? It could mean some very wide-ranging change. And so where we are right now is really, it's still kind of the phase 2 process. There's 3 phases. We're still kind of in the midst of phase 2, which is really, kind of analyzing the data and kind of going back and looking at our problem statements and going back. And it's a very two-way approach. But by the end of this school year, as I understand it, AIR is going to present its formal summary. And then the district's going to have an opportunity to lay out its plan for addressing those roots and those systemic conditions that will bring more change. And I think that's going to open up in a bigger window with the community and hopefully, with the DEI committee for sure, about where do we as stakeholders come together and and use our resources to address those changes that are needed. So it's an exciting time. Again, I'm coming into it, very early on. I started as a school committee member just as AIR and that equity audit was starting. So, it's exciting. I've done one of these root cause analysis. I was part of a professional development subgroup of SEAM. Gosh, it was almost 10 years ago now, as a teacher. And it was about a half a dozen of us with some of our administrators at SEAM. And we did the same sort of work. And, it really gives you a real reflection in the mirror about, what you value and what you put forth and how can you make things better.
It sounds like a great opportunity. And I got to hand it, and I think we all have to hand it to the school system for engaging in such an in-depth process. And it sounds like an opportunity to make some changes, but born of a very thorough. So we can trust this process because it sounds like it's going to be very thorough, and what emerges will be something that has had a lot of input. We're lucky that you, Wendy, and Madonna, all of whom are on the DEI committee, are part of, or have been part of the process. And I know there'll be other opportunities. We are lucky because we also have opportunity to have input in other ways with the school system. Certainly, we go to the school committee meetings from time to time. Just earlier today, we were on the Zoom with Dr. Chu and two of the curriculum directors talking about this month as Holocaust Education Month, learning about the more about the curriculum and how the curriculum is geared toward diversity, education surrounding understanding intolerance and tolerance, and ultimately what lessons do we know and learn from the Holocaust and other horrible events in history. But we, that was one example of how we are finding the opportunity to talk about the curriculum. This equity audit is sort of a very comprehensive, it sounds like extremely comprehensive approach, which is good to hear, and we're excited by it. We are past 30 minutes. We could go on for another 30 for sure.
I apologize for talking so much. I get so energized in this. It's
no, not at all. Not at all. We're really thrilled to spend time with you. In fact, we might need to have a part 2. Any closing remarks, Anjali?
Just a quick question, and just very, very high level. So first of all, thank you for explaining this audit details and the AIR process, what they're going through, and the working groups. What are the next steps? Are we waiting for a presentation on the final outcomes, and when is that scheduled next?
Yep. So I think from the root cause analysis event, AIR is going to go back, and I think there's going to be another set of interviews and kind of data collection. And then AIR will do some analysis of that. And we hope to have a presentation by the end of the school year from AIR. Obviously, we're in budget season right now. I'm going to be making Catherine Clear and I have been lucky to be part of a school start time subcommittee. We're going to be making a presentation on Monday night regarding a proposal for a later start time. So I think, by the end of this school year, we want to have that AIR presentation. I think you guys are going to be there to join us for that as invitations, because I think that is going to take us into the next step where Westford takes the baton from AIR, and we figure out how we want to approach these systems, the systems change. So that's the goal. But I think the key piece here is that we want to do this with fidelity. We want to do it with every piece of info and every tool available. So it may take a little longer than, but I think some of that data collection, that the qualitative and quantitative piece from last year did take a little longer, and we're waiting for AIR to come back with that, but it just means we're doing it that much more effectively. So we are looking forward to that presentation soon, and then where it takes us next. So.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Welcome.
Well, thanks for your time. We look forward to seeing you at our next DEI committee meeting. Before we go, I do want to thank Ryan Cousins and the team here at WestfordCAT for this state-of-the-art studio and for the flexibility for being able to schedule these on Friday afternoons. So thank you. Have a good weekend. Thank you, Anjali.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Bill. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Anjali.
Yeah.
Yep, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.